must do is embrace the vision.
What's good, Vision Gang? You already know what it is, and if you didn't know, you better find out, cause I am your boy DaVizion, and I'm back again with another MMA reaction today. Today I'm reacting to LucasTracyMMA, the two most feared men in UFC history, y'all. I believe this video is gonna be about Yoel Romero and Tony Ferguson. So I know Cucuy is a pretty crazy motherfucker. I've heard of Romero. I don't really know that much about him. I haven't reacted to his life story or nothing, but we're gonna learn a little bit about Yoel today and Cucuy, and I'm really excited to find out why these are the two most feared men in UFC history. So let's go ahead and get this thing started, y'all. But first, before we get the video started, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell to be first to see my videos, and smash that like button. Let's get this thing going.
Boogeymen. This is one of the most overused terms in MMA. People often use it to describe up-and-coming fighters that are merely avoided and ducked by the ones that have already established their rank. But this doesn't take into account the overwhelming sense of eeriness and the powerful mystique of someone that is truly feared. A boogeyman is unavoidable. They're always looming in the darkness. No matter how many wins you get to separate yourself from the pack, there will be that one man that you can't seem to shake. And if you meet them head on, you are going to get scathed. So today, we're going to discuss the few unshakable, unavoidable, and truly feared men in combat. We're going to discuss the boogeymen. In 1976, the Soviet Union invested over $1 billion in Cuban factories. A year later, Yoel Romero was born, the soldier of God. One look at him, and it's no mystery as to why some think he was created in one of those Cuban Soviet-funded labs. Romero grew up in poverty, and he took to combat sports at a young age. When Yoel was a boy, Cuban government officials sought him out in order to put him into tryouts for wrestling and boxing. Yoel was then placed into the strenuous and gritty Cuban wrestling program, in which he developed to become one of the greatest wrestlers on the planet. In 1999, Yoel won gold in the World Wrestling Championships, and in 2000, he took silver in the Sydney Olympic Games. He then went on to win 5 Pan American Championships. And given that a wrestling base was ideal for MMA, there probably wasn't a man alive more tailored to mixed martial arts than him. Yoel Romero made the transition in the early 2010s, and in 2013,
early 2010, so it took him another full 10 years.
When most men were thinking about retirement in MMA, Yoel made his UFC debut. As you could imagine, his transition was seamless. Yoel knocked out his first opponent with an earth-shattering flying knee, one of his most impressive KOs to date, as you can see him launching himself in the air like a cannonball. Yoel then rose through the ranks, tearing through each and every fighter in the middleweight division.
Okay, so he's a middleweight.
The most stacked the middleweight division had ever been.
Oh,
but
shit.
The top 10 was referred to as the Murderer's Row.
The Murderer's Row.
With beasts like Jacare Souza, a young Derek Brunson, and Tim Kennedy, who was a real-life active Special Arms Forces member. Yoel ran through all of them and earned his shot at the former champion, Chris Weidman, who had only recently lost his belt. Chris Weidman was a decorated college wrestler. Yoel took Weidman's accolades and shoved them up his ass, stuffing 7 of 8 of Chris Weidman's takedowns and landing 2 takedowns of his own. In the third round, Weidman attempted a takedown, but this time he was met head-on by a perfectly timed
right to the head.
Another terrifying and unexpected KO.
Knocked him clean out, busted him open too?
With volume like Max, or pinpoint accuracy like Anderson Silva. But Yoel, he didn't do that. He took his time. Romero had this thing where he'd just lull guys to sleep in the beginning of his fights. He'd start off moving around the octagon like an old man, unassuming, lazy, sometimes throwing awkward pillow punches, not even meant to hurt you, just to chuck them out there. But then, before you'd know it, you'd see Yoel flip a switch and charge his opponents down like a bull, uncorking an explosive overhand that you just simply couldn't do anything.
Couldn't do nothing about it, huh?
Your only chance to stay in the fight was to run away. You could not for the life of you fight Yoel Romero without a constant fear of him leaping into the air, 185 pounds of explosive muscle flying at you with unreal speed, and you'd have nothing to do about it. After knocking out Weidman, Yoel decided to get on the mic to call out the recently crowned champ Michael Bisping, who happened to be in attendance.
I love you, Mike! I love you, Mike! You say something like this for me, and now I say you. I love you! See you soon, boy.
Yoel was on an 8-fight win streak.
Called him out.
Had undoubtedly earned himself.
So I wonder if he got a title shot.
Flipping him the bird was just another way of saying, fuck all of that. I'm not going anywhere near this man. Bisping was 37 at the time, and it was understandable that after taking damn near 20 years to win the title, he'd want a bit of a layup for his first title defense. And I'm guessing the UFC offered Michael a contract for Yoel, but he turned it down because he decided to sit out for a whole year to take on GSP, who I'm almost certain wouldn't have made his comeback if Yoel were champ. But it ain't like Yoel was just a young gun either. Even though this was just the beginning for him, Yoel was 39,
Damn.
2 years older than Michael Bisping. Romero made it a point to punk Michael Bisping by filming a series of videos calling out Bisping for ducking him.
Give me that fucking boy! Where are you, man? Where are you? I wait for you here in Cuba!
That is some fuckboy shit, man.
Thankfully,
ducking
a
fights,
surging
ducking the better
contender
fighter
in
too.
Australia
Clearly the better
stepped
fighter.
up, Robert Whittaker. He was also on a tear, riding a 7-fight win streak. And given that both men were equally deserving, the UFC decided to put an interim belt on the line. Whittaker edged out the victory, but like every other Romero opponent, he left completely injured, suffering a torn ligament in his knee, courtesy of a Yoel Romero.
Damn, so Whittaker beat Yoel Romero. That's wild.
It wasn't just whether you could beat him, you would need to survive him, something most of his opponents just couldn't do. 6 months after his loss to Robert Whittaker, Romero filled in as a late replacement for what would have been an undisputed title fight between Luke Rockhold and Robert Whittaker. GSP had recently retired after beating Bisping, and Yoel was the only available
So
opponent
Bisping still
who was
lost.
willing to take the short notice bout. Romero missed weight, so the
Damn.
UFC announced that Rockhold was the only one eligible to earn a title win, and if Yoel won, he'd go home empty-handed. Nonetheless, the fight went on as scheduled, and this is where Yoel earned yet another nickname, Man of Steel.
Because like when I was punching and kicking him, he felt like metal, like a dude made out of concrete.
Rockhold was known for taking a kick-heavy approach, and he did just that against Romero, but it backfired. Although Rockhold was landing early, you could see him starting to wilt as the fight progressed. Why? Because Romero hurt to kick. Rockhold said that hitting Romero felt like he was hitting steel, and that he literally couldn't proceed to do so without inflicting damage
On himself.
For goodness sakes, Yoel Romero was basically unbeatable. How in the fuck were you even supposed to have a chance against this guy when you couldn't even hurt him? In typical Romero fashion, he hardly did anything.
You'd have to
throughout
beat
the
him in
first two
points.
rounds,
Just
landing pitter
land more
allowing
strikes
Rockhold
than he does.
to show his hand.
Don't allow
However,
takedowns.
in the third
Be a defensive
round,
fighter, I guess.
Romero exploded.
It's not very fun to watch,
and
but
knocked him out cold.
that's how
with
I
a
would approach
vicious
it.
Overhand right.
Shit.
After the KO, you can see Romero running around the octagon like an ancient warlord, showing the crowd that despite being a 40-year-old, he was going to be sticking around the top of the middleweight division for some time. And for the most horrific moment of them all, Romero went up to Rockhold after knocking him out, kissed him, and told him that he loved him. Imagine waking up after getting knocked out just to see Yoel Romero in your face telling you that he loves you. Although Yoel missed weight, he was given another crack at the belt against a recovered Robert Whittaker, who had been injured ever since their first battle. In their rematch, Yoel and Whittaker had one of the greatest fights of all time.
Okay.
A back-and-forth brawl, where Whitaker broke Yoel's orbital bone
Oh, shit.
in the second round, being the first and only man to seriously injure Yoel in the octagon. However, Romero wasn't short on inflicting his own damage in this fight. He would go on to knock Whitaker down twice and dominate the final round, in which Whitaker resorted to surviving. Whitaker yet again got his hand raised, but it was highly controversial this time. Many fans scoring it for Romero.
Okay.
Either way, this fight went down as one of the best in UFC history. Oh, you recognize this guy? Yeah, that's Israel Adesanya. Or should I say, just another guy that got punked by Yoel. Adesanya had just knocked out Robert Whitaker to win the undisputed middleweight belt and wanted to make a quick turnaround to defend his title. With Paulo Costa being injured from getting into a war with Yoel Romero, go figure, there weren't any other deserving contenders, aside from one, our boy, Yoel. Normally, the champion wouldn't even think about fighting Romero. After all, he had multiple cracks at the belt and wasn't even on a win streak. But Adesanya wanted to win over the fans that had been in his comment section for years, saying, just wait till he fights Romero, or he ain't champ until he takes out Yoel. So what did he do?
I asked for the boogeyman of the division, the guy no one wants to fight, Yoel Romero. I mean, he doesn't deserve a shot at the champ after coming off his last few fights losing.
Right.
If he's the guy that people think is gonna beat me, he's the people's champ, huh? Then all right, let's see what you got.
Becoming the first guy to ever ask for the fight. But it was a huge mistake. You see, Adesanya was touted as the best striker in MMA at the time, and he wanted to prove to people
They having
that
a
he could
dance
be the
off,
first
fuck it.
one to finish
Fuck a
Romero.
stare off, they have a dance
But all
off.
that went out the drain when he actually came face to face with the soldier of God. Yoel was 43 at the time, and you'd think that Father Time would start to catch up with him. But no, he came into fight week looking bigger and scarier than ever. Yoel knew that this was his last chance, and he had a special energy about him all week. He was as intense as you could possibly imagine, and had one of the most chilling interviews ever just a few days prior to the fight.
Everything is possible in your life when you believe. When you believe, everything is possible. You have a two hands. Maybe. Everything is possible. Go. Take it whatever you want to be.
In their final stare down, you can see the nervous energy from Izzy as he stands across from the much shorter Yoel. Just judging by Yoel's facial expression and wide eyes, he looks like the last person you'd ever fuck with. In the first round, Yoel came out slower than usual, literally standing still for about a minute to try to confuse Adesanya, who eventually tried to close the distance but caught an enormous overhand right flush to the face. From here on out, Adesanya wanted no part of engaging with Romero, and he opted to leg kick at range for the rest of the fight. There were multiple moments where Yoel tried to blitz forward to rush Adesanya, but he had no success because Adesanya would literally turn his back and sprint away. So much for being the first guy to finish Yoel. And don't get me wrong, most of us fans would be crawling up to get out of the cage if we were in there with the soldier of God. But Adesanya had made it a point, leading up to this fight, to say that he would finish him. And a lot of people put the blame on Romero for this one, but he was the only guy actually trying to rush forward on multiple occasions. If I could sum up the fight with one picture, this would be it. Romero screaming in the face of a spooked Adesanya as if to say, "You called me out, I didn't win, but you got punked." Romero never became a champion, but the most impressive part of his career is that he never had a legitimate loss, aside from the first fight with Robert Whitaker. The Adesanya fight, the Costa fight, and the second Whitaker fight were all controversial. To summarize, the way to beat Romero was to merely survive. A true boogeyman. Tony
Okay.
Ferguson.
Yeah, Cucuy.
Cucuy. When you take a look at Ferguson, you can see why he acquired the name El Cucuy. Tony looked like an assassin. Tony's face was sunken in and sharp like a knife, and his long arms with razor-like elbows added to his fear factor. The guy looked like a weapon. Although he never won the undisputed title, you have to understand how good this man was. To go 15-1 in his first 16 UFC fights, part of them being the legendary 12-fight win streak. To do that in the UFC's toughest division is second to none.
No living being should ever eat processed food for every single meal of their life.
He was known for marching people down and breaking them with relentless pressure and volume. He fought like a meat grinder. Anywhere the fight went, you could be sure to take damage. Tony had one of the longest reaches in the UFC lightweight division's history at a staggering 76.5 inches.
Shit, he got a long
He could light
reach.
you up from a distance with heavy jabs and elbows. Unlike most fighters, Tony wouldn't just throw kicks aimed at your leg or your calf. He would aim for the shins, and he wouldn't give a single fuck about whether you checked it or not. He'd smash your legs with heavy low kicks and batter you until you'd had enough and wanted to relieve yourself by taking the fight to the ground. But this was just a pick your poison position, because some would say that going to the ground with Tony was even worse. He was famous for slicing guys up with vicious elbows on bottom, and when guys knew that there was just nothing they could do to stop his offensive onslaught, they'd just wilt, and he'd eventually wrap them up in a submission. His favorite one being the Darce choke, which also gave him a nickname, the Darce Knight.
The Darce
He was just
Knight.
one of those guys,
That's dope.
like Romero, you just have to endure and survive at best. There was no finishing him. He was way too tough. He had a granite chin, and his cardio was better than everyone else's. The guy had a mystique about him that I've never really seen in any other fighter, in part due to his insane work ethic. Tony was known for being one of the hardest workers in MMA history, if not the hardest worker. The great Chael Sonnen has a perfect quote to summarize it. Chael said, "Every hard practice that I've seen in my life inspired me. Great wrestlers, strikers, jiu-jitsu guys, when I saw them work their asses off, I knew that I needed to work like them. But I remember seeing Tony work out, and for the first time, I wasn't inspired. Because I remember telling myself, if that's what it takes, if that's really what it takes to be great, I need to find something else to do. I need a break. I need some human interaction. I gotta turn on some music." But Tony, he didn't have any of those things. He just continued to put his nose to the grindstone. I know I remember hearing horror stories on how impressive Tony's cardio was as well. How he would run up and down mountains with his training partners, only to lap them multiple times over. Tony's work ethic was evident in his results as well, as he would stay atop of the lightweight division for 7 straight years.
Having cardio will take you a long way, for real.
For putting a beating on people in impressive fashion, that there was a photo put together to show all of his opponent's faces after fighting him. Each and every one
Bloody,
looking
battered,
bloodied
bruised,
and
broken,
Habib
for real.
had his wins, but so did Tony. And although they never shared the octagon with each other, to say that one was better than the other during both of their peaks would just be unfair. Tony had just as much of a claim.
Ooh, that's an interesting one right there. So what do you guys think? In their prime, not considering Tony's downfall, but in their prime, both at their very peak, who wins? Khabib or El Cucuy? Let me know down below.
To being a champion in his career, he did acquire an interim belt over Kevin Lee, but the undisputed belt never came, given that Conor McGregor had held up the division during his stunt with Mayweather. I think it was just one of those situations where Habib was in the right place at the right time. He was the one who got lucky enough to get the opportunity to fight for an undisputed belt, whereas Tony didn't, and that there's no way for us to ever know. But in his prime, I guarantee you, there was not a man alive at 155 pounds that would have gone into a Ferguson fight and leave unscathed. And that's why Tony Ferguson is the epitome of a boogeyman.
Alright, y'all, that was the 2 most feared men in UFC history by Lucas Tracy MMA. Shout out to Lucas Tracy MMA. That was a dope video. Yoel, the Soldier of God Romero, is a real beast. I had no idea he punked Izzy like that, and he pretty much punked almost every fighter he fought. Just a few guys were able to beat him, and really they just survived. That was the that was how you beat him. You survived. Like, that is crazy. And El Cucuy, before his downfall, like, I knew dude was a beast just from the reactions I did earlier on him, and I've always had respect ever since I learned about Tony Ferguson. So, not surprised about Tony Ferguson, but I do need to watch some more Soldier of God. So if you guys know any good videos on him, let me know down below, for real. I hope you guys are enjoying these videos, y'all. You already know what it is. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit that notification bell to be first to see these videos, and smash that like button to send this video to the moon. Man, I love y'all guys, man. I hope you guys enjoy your day. Be safe, give it your all, and I'm gonna see you next. This is your boy DaVizion, and we out. Peace.